Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Astaghfirullah allazi la ilaha illa huwal hayyul qayyum. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Jul jalali wal ikrami wa atubu ilayh. Allahumma inni as'aluka mujibati rahmatik wa zaima maghfiratik wa najata minan nar wa min kulli baliya wal fawza bil jannati wa rizwana fi daris salam wajwar nabiy ka Muhammadin alayhi wa alayhi salam. Allahumma ma bina min ni'matin famink la ilaha illa an astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله أشهد أن عليا حجة الله هيا على الصلاة هيا على الصلاة هيا على الفلاح هيا على الفلاح هيا على خير العمل هيا على خير العمل قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله استغفر الله وأسأله التوبة الله أكبر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانهر إن شانئك هو الأبتر الله أكبر سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمد ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد سمع الله لمن حمد الله أكبر سبحان ربي العلى وبحمد ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر سبحان ربي العلى وبحمد ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد الله أكبر ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار بحق محمد وآل الطيبين الطاهرين الله أكبر سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمد ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان ربي العلى وبحمد ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر سبحان ربي العلى وبحمد ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر الحمد لله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله الله أكبر الله أكبر سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمد ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان ربي العلى وبحمد ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر سبحان ربي العلى وبحمد ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله سبحان الله والحمد الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده سبحان الله. يا ولي العافية نسألك العافية، عافية الدين والدنيا والآخرة يا أرحم الراحمين. وصلى الله على محمد وآل الطيبين الطاهرين. الله أكبر. بسم الله وبالله والحمد لله وخير الأسماء لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إنه ليس لي علم موزي رزقي، وإنما أتلو قطرات تقطر على قلبي، فأجول في طلبه البلدان، فأنا فيما أنا طالب كالحيران، لا أدري في سهل هو أم في جبل، أم في أرض أم في سماء، أم في بر أم في بحر، وعلى يدي من قبلي من وقد علمت أن علمه عندك وأسبابه بيدك، وأنت الذي تقسم بلطفك وتسبب برحمتك. اللهم صل على محمد وآله، واجعل يا رب رزقك لي واسعا، مطلبه سهل ما أخذه قريبا، ولا تؤنني بطلب ما لم تقدر لي في رزقا، فإنك غني ذابي وأنا فقير إلى رحمتك. فصل على محمد وآله، وجد على عبدك بفضلك، إنك ذو فضل عظيم.
اللهم صل على محمد وآله.
السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله. السلام عليكم ابن رسول الله. السلام عليكم ابن أمير المؤمنين وابن سيد الوسيين. السلام عليك ابن فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء. السلام عليك يا سلطان. يا علي ابن موسى الرضا، كن شفينا شفيع والدينا في يوم الجزاء ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا مولانا صاحب الزمان. الأمان الأمان الأمان. من فتنة الزمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن. السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان. السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان. أجل الله تعالى فرجك وزهورك ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم. تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون. لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون. إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون. وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون. وسواء عليهم أنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشى الرحمن بالغيب فبشر بمغفرة وأجر كريم. إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين. واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون. قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء أنتم إلا تكذبون. قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين. قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن تنتهوا لنرجمنكم ولا يمسنكم منا عذاب أليم. قالوا طائركم معكم أين ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون. وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون. وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون. أأتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يرد الرحمن بضر لا تغني عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون. إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين. إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون. قيل ادخلوا الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين. وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين. إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون. يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون. ألم يروا كما أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون. وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون. وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون. وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وأعناب فجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض من أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالعرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثل ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم انفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قال من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم أن لا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا الصراط المستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا فلم تكونوا تأكلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لتمسنا على أعين فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نؤمن ننكس في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه شيئا وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوب ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند مهزلون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم يرى الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون. الفاتحة.
पर मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सलवात। करबला वाले हमें दर से रज़ा देते हैं, करबला वाले हमें سے رضا دیتے ہیں، تیر پر تیر بھی کھا کر یہ دعا دیتے ہیں۔ کربلا والے ہمیں در سے رضا دیتے ہیں، کربلا والے ہمیں در سے رضا دیتے ہیں، تیر پر تیر بھی کھا کر یہ دعا دیتے ہیں، کربلا والے ہمیں در سے رضا دیتے ہیں۔ ہائے نانا تیری امت میں کوئی رحم نہیں، ہائے نانا تیری امت میں کوئی رحم نہیں، بی بی زینب کو درے خیمہ رلا دیتے ہیں، کربلا والے ہمیں در سے رضا دیتے ہیں، قید وہ قید کے سونے بھی نہ پائے عابد، قید وہ قید کے سونے بھی نہ پائے عابد، جب بھی سوتے ہیں تو زنجیر ہلا دیتے ہیں، کربلا والے ہمیں در سے رضا دیتے ہیں۔ اب نہ مانگیں گے کبھی پانی چچا لوٹ آؤ، اب نہ مانگیں گے کبھی پانی چچا لوٹ آؤ، خشک ہونٹوں سے یہ معصوم صدا دیتے ہیں، کربلا والے ہمیں در سے رضا دیتے ہیں۔ مجھ کو پہچانو ذرا غافل و سوچو سمجھو، مجھ کو پہچانو ذرا غافل و سوچو سمجھو، مجھ کو مہمان بلا کر یوں دغا دیتے ہیں، کربلا والے ہمیں در سے رضا دیتے ہیں، تیر پر تیر بھی کھا کر یہ دعا دیتے ہیں۔ محمد وآل محمد صلوات۔ سورۃ المبارکۃ الفاتحہ۔
Shaykh Bilal, respected elders, brothers and sisters in Iman, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Tomorrow, Thursday, we will have our Eid al-Zahra program starting at 8:30 p.m., starting with Surah Yaseen, followed by Hadith Qissa, Dua Kumail, Munajat, Majlis by Shaykh Bilal, as well as Qasida, and then Ziyarat al-Waratha. On Friday, we will have Salatul Jummah starting at 12:30 p.m. with Dua Nudba with Shaykh Bilal. And on Saturday, we will be having our special meeting starting at 4:30 p.m. All Sijni members are encouraged to attend along with family members. The agenda will be our opening dua, followed by our previous meeting minutes, matters arising, discussion and resolution on future of our Jericho property, Washington Memorial Cemetery update, a potential new cemetery update, and our closing dua. Tonight's Surah Yaseen has been sponsored for the Ithal Ithwab of the Marhumeen that are displayed on the screen. Let us all recite Surah Fatiha for all Marhumeen. Just a quick announcement, as we are urging members to please refrain from putting coins in the Sadqa and Imam Zamin boxes, as it's becoming extremely difficult when it comes to making our deposits. Lastly, let's recite 5 times Amayujib for all those who are sick here and around the world. Let's also keep in our du'as Brother Yawar Hussein. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Amma yujibul mustaraiza do'u wa yakshifu su'. 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 Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala. Please recite aloud salawat as we call up Shaykh Bilal. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Bismillah. رحم الله من يقرأ سورة الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. الحمد لله رب العالمين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين، واللعنة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تعالى في محكم كتابه الحكيم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ومن الناس من يشري نفسه ابتغاء مرضات الله والله رؤوف بالعباد. آمنا بالله، صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Your second salawat for love of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And as condolences to the Imam of our time, your loudest of salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. In Surah Baqarah, verse number 207, Allah recounts and mentions that there are those who sell themselves for the sake of Allah, limardatillah, for the pleasure of Allah. Surah Baqarah, verse number 207, is most famously associated with the event of Imam Ali sleeping on the bed of the Holy Prophet on the night of Hijrat. When our Prophet leaves for Hijrat, Imam Ali sleeps on this bed. There's a discussion that says an Imam, to be an Imam, has ilmul ghayb, knowledge of the unseen, and what will come to be is well aware to the Imam because he can see What is ahead? So the question comes and says that if the Imam knows what's going to happen and he sleeps on the bed of the Prophet, is it even a fadilat? Is it a good quality? He knew what was going to happen. He knew that nothing was going to happen to him. He knew he was going to live through the experience. So should we be even proud of this fact? This discussion talks about ilmul ghaib and knowledge of the unseen and being able to know events and be able to know the affairs that are going on. Is that if an Imam has knowledge of all things, then it impedes in two elements. One, that those attributes that we give them as fadilat and status, do they actually deserve it because they knew what the outcome was? And two, that the Imam then, if he knows when and where he's going to die, is he really subjugating himself to death, or is he subjugating himself to the will of Allah? Our eighth Imam would explain, he says, وَمَا مِنَّا إِلَّا مَقْتُولٌ شَهِيد. Imam Allah would say that all of us Imams are all shaheed. Will always be shaheed. There is no one except from amongst us except that we are killed and murdered. But if the Imam knows that it's coming, what does that actually mean? To understand this, to understand the significance of how there isn't a conflict between the attribute of the Imam knowing and having ilmul ghaib and the Imam performing the actions that he does and it being in honor, there are three ways that we can take a look at this. One, that says that the Imam has ilmul ghaib, that he's constantly aware of everything, knows everything that's going on, and he keeps doing these things, and in reality, anything that we say is the fadilat, is the honor of the Imam, is not really an honor because, well, for him, it's just like he knows what's going to happen and he does it anyway. The other is to say that the Imam really doesn't have ilmul ghaib. And his lack of ilmul ghaib, it's just that every so often he'll know something ahead of time or he'll figure something out. The way, for example, a normal person can figure something out, and that's what was called ilmul ghaib. This implies that the authority and the knowledge of the Imam is incomplete. The third attribute is to describe and say that ilmul ghaib is, for example, a knowledge the Imam possesses should he choose to invoke it. For example, if I ask you the square root of 737, you can open your phone right now and look it up, and you'll know the answer because you have access to it. Or you can choose not to look it up and continue this process and say, I don't know, or you tell me, and I'll say, I don't know, I'll look it up. This third attribute describes and says that the ilm is present, knowledge of the unseen is present, but the Imam doesn't constantly invoke it. This aspect of not invoking knowledge of the unseen constantly is similar to the concept of the mu'jiza, i'jaz, a miracle. The Imam possesses the ability to perform a miracle, but he doesn't perform it in every instance, at every time, and whenever he wants. Rather, he only invokes that access that he has to a miraculous ability or the knowledge of the unseen when the religion of Islam needs it. And in this way, we can understand that when it comes to the shakhsi, personal affairs of the Imam does not invoke that knowledge of the unseen, and rather relies and has tawakkul upon Allah and trust in Allah to bring his affair to a rightful conclusion. Against the concept that we say that the Imam always knows, and what's there to trust in God if he knows all the answers and all the solutions at any point in time, and that there's no way to be like an Imam. This concept, when we apply it to the lives of the A'immah alayhimus salam, to understand that though they can access ilmul ghaib, they don't access it 24/7, but rather access it when Islam needs, explains and tells us that the greatest attribute of an Imam is not his ability to perform a miracle. The greatest attribute of an Imam is not his ability to know the future or to know the unseen affairs that are going on behind the scenes, but rather the most important attribute an Imam possesses is the attribute of knowledge when to invoke these tools and responsibilities. The ilm that the Imam possesses is his attribute of superiority over all of humanity and mankind. That the Imam's actions are on the basis of knowledge. The reason that it's important that this fundamental a'zam attribute, sifat of an Imam is knowledge, is that an Imam is placed in society for us to be able to follow him. If his greatest attribute is something that is impossible to be followed, then we would say there's no point in following someone who I can never be like. No, the reality that the greatest attribute of the Imam is his knowledge is that we should all be pursuing that same attribute and developing that characteristic within ourselves. This same attribute of knowledge is what gave Adam superiority over the Malaika. When Allah creates Adam and the Malaika complain, Allah goes, Inni a'lamu ma la ta'lamun. I know that which you do not know. And then Allah explains and He says, وَعَلَّمَ أَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا Allama Adama asma'a kullaha, that Allah says, I taught Adam all of these names. ثُمَّ أَرَضَهُمْ عَلَى الْمَلَائِكَةِ, and then I presented those objects, those things that were unnamed to the Malaika, and I asked them, أَنْبِئُنِي أَسْمَاءِ هَؤُلَاءِ إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. O Malaika, you think you're better than Adam? Then give me the knowledge of these things that I'm asking you about. And the Malaika replied that, لَا إِلْمَ لَنَا إِلَّا مَا عَلَّمْتَنَا. We don't know except that which you tell us, Ya Allah. And then Allah makes Adam the teacher of the Malaika. Meaning the greatest honor that insan has over angels and makes us ashraf al-makhluqat is the potential to earn knowledge. Therefore, if we want to see the best of humanity, the best attribute that they have to possess is knowledge, not their ability to know the unseen, nor their ability to perform miracles. This is why when we look at the life of the Ahlul Bayt, you'll see that their use of the knowledge of the unseen is in the defense of the religion of Islam, not otherwise. We'll give a few examples from the life of Imam Hasan Al-Askari alayhi salam with your loudest of salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Briefly, the Shahadat of this 11th Imam is known as Ibn al-Hadi wa Abul Mahdi. That his unique attribute is that he is the son of the guide and the father of the one who will guide as well too. That these unique titles of his that he possesses, in terms of the lives of the Ma'sumin, his life is the third shortest. The shortest being the life of Bibi Fatima, who was martyred at 18. Then Imam Jawad, who was martyred at 25. And then Imam Al-Askari, who was martyred at the age of 28. But amongst the period of imamat and authority of imamat, the shortest period of imamat is the imamat of Imam Al-Askari, that goes from the age of 22 when he establishes his imamat until the age of 28 when he is martyred, which is 6 years or 5 years and some months. Majority of this 5 years and some months the imam spends in prison. Famously, we talk about our 7th imam being the one who is Masjoon, the one who spent his life in prison, but after him the next one who spent most of his time, most of his imamat in prison is Imam Al-Askari. And it was on the fundamental that people knew that he was going to be the one. The Khulafa knew that it is his son that will be the Mahdi who will rise and to change this world. And to prevent that from happening, they kept our 11th Imam in prison. To the extent where the life of Imam Al-Askari was a secret even from the Shia. So Imam Hasan Al-Askari, his lifespan of 28 years, the first 22 years that he spends under his father, the first 20 years no one even knows Imam Hasan Al-Askari exists. Why? Because of his older brother. So Imam Hasan Al-Askari had 3 other brothers. There were a total of 4 brothers. His oldest brother was Muhammad, then Imam Hasan, then he had a brother Hussein, and then he had a brother by the name of Ja'far. Ja'far is the one who is known as Ja'far the liar, or Ja'far the one who repented, who tried to take the imamat after the death of Imam Hasan Al-Askari. But until the age of 20, Sayyid Muhammad was the most prominent figure from the sons of Imam Al-Hadi. And everyone thought the next Imam is going to be this Sayyid Muhammad, until he is murdered, and that's why he was murdered and poisoned, to attempt to cut off the line of Imamah. Which is why in Al-Kafi there is a narration pertaining to Imam Al-Askari that's narrated by many of the Shia that say that over 100 of the Banu Hashim gathered at the Shahadat of Sayyid Muhammad to pay ta'ziyat to Imam Al-Hadi, to pay their respects to the 10th Imam. And as they sat around and were paying their respects by the body of Sayyid Muhammad, they said, we saw a beautiful young man who we had never seen before and did not recognize enter into the hall and tear at his collar in crying over his brother who was martyred there. When we asked everyone, who is this young man? Why have we never seen him before? How can we have missed such a person? They say this is Hasan ibn Ali, the son of Imam Al-Hadi, who was always in the company of his brother Sayyid Muhammad, and Sayyid Muhammad was the prominent figure and Hasan was the hidden figure. The assumption was always that Sayyid Muhammad was the personality that was the teacher of Imam Al-Askari, was the leader, and this was the small child in his company. But Allah had hidden the affair of imamate in Imam Hasan Al-Askari in such a way that it was hidden to the fact that Imam Askari was the one who would lead Sayyid Muhammad, not the other way around. So as to show that imamate was protected under the personality of Sayyid Muhammad. At the age of 20, when Sayyid Muhammad dies, Imam Al-Hasan Al-Askari spends 2 years with his father, where his father announces that this is the imam after me to the people and to the Shia of the time. Where they even describe and say that Imam Al-Hadi, at the death of Sayyid Muhammad, says to Imam Al-Askari, in this affair it is for you to thank Allah because He has made clear the affair for all of those in you after me. To announce the Imamat of Imam Al-Askari. When Imam Al-Askari becomes the Imam, immediately he's in prison and spends most of this time in prison, except for about 1.5 years to less than 2 years that they say he was not in prison. And that was because the Khulafa of the time, when their religion was challenged, they had no choice but to turn to the Imam for assistance. In this we saw the Imam's description of offering knowledge of the unseen and knowing the affairs. For example, the story that sets the Imam free from prison is the story of the Christian priest who, and the story is quite famously told, who came to Samarra during a drought, and the Muslims would pray for rain and no rain would fall. And the Christian priest says, let me pray. He prays and it rains. The religion of Islam becomes into doubt because all of those Muslimin come and they say, why are we Muslims if the Christians' prayers are answered and the Muslims are not? The Khalifa has no answer for them. His wazirs have no answer for them. They said the only one who can assist us is the son of Zahra. Imam Al-Askari is brought out from the prison that he was kept in to ensure that there would be no 12th Imam. And he then is brought to this priest and says to the priest, pray. The priest prays, it rains. The Imam says, take what he has in his hand. They take away what the priest has in his hand, was a bone of one of the Anbiya. And then the priest prays and it doesn't rain. And Imam Al-Askari explains, it's not the fact that this is a Christian man that rain falls when he makes dua, but rather he has found in his possession a bone from one of the Anbiya. One of the secrets of the Anbiya, that Allah has granted them a dignity and respect, that their bodies remained covered on this earth, and should it so ever happen that a bone of a Nabi is uncovered under the open sky, that Allah will cause it to rain from the heavens until the ground melts or becomes wet, and the bones of that Nabi sink back into the ground. This isn't unusual, as a matter of fact, that even the Muslimin knew this, because they describe and say after the death of the Prophet, when a drought hit the city of Medina, and this is noted in history, that the people went to Aisha and asked her, what should we do about this drought, because nobody can give us a solution. Aisha said the problem is very simple. Go to the grave of the Prophet and uncover the roof from over the grave of the Prophet just a little bit. And the people of Medina at that time, when they uncovered just the grave of the Prophet, it began to rain in Medina, where the drought was alleviated from them. So Imam Al-Askari exposes this attribute of showing what the position of the Anbiya and their status is, and how this man has been taking advantage of it. And as a consequence, the religion of Islam is saved, to show that it's not the fact that this Christian makes dua, but that he takes a strong wasila, and so therefore the result is born. When people hear and see that this Imam saved the religion of Islam, saved the religion of his grandfather, they ask the Khalifa, why have you hidden him from us? Why can't we get access to him? And it's narrated that after this, for a period about 1.5 years or so, Imam Askari was not imprisoned during this time. However, even though he wasn't officially imprisoned, he was responsible that every day he had the obligation to go to the Dar al-Imara, the government building, and to show his face that he was still in the city of Samarra and that he was not leaving, because the fear of the Khulafa was that if the Imam leaves this city in which there is soldiers to keep it closed, that the Imam would raise an army and collapse the government of the Khulafa. In this time, it's noted that one of the Shia sees Imam Al-Askari proceeding towards Dar al-Imara and sees everybody walking around Imam Al-Askari and not realizing who he is. He thinks to himself and he says, I should at this moment call out and tell these people that this man amongst you is your authority. This is the son of Zahra. This is the leader of humanity. You should follow him. Oh people, why are you ignorant of this Imam? He says, I had only thought this idea, And Imam Al-Askari came upon me and placed his finger on his lips and said to me, "Stay silent, or there will be the shedding of blood of the believers and the faithful people." He says, the Imam knew my affair before I could even announce it, and he knew what was in me, and prevented me from performing this action. There are three stories of the generosity of Imam Al-Askari. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. That describe the knowledge of the Imam. It's narrated that on the same trip as the Imam would go to and from in the city of Samarra every day to go to Dar al-Imara, people would gather to ask him and to take advantage of that time. And it so happens that one who has no affiliation with Ahlul Bayt, but knowing the generosity of the Imam, came and he decided he was going to ask Imam Hasan for some wealth. So he comes to Imam Al-Askari and he says to him, "Ya Ibn Rasulullah, I swear to you I have not a penny, a dinar to my name." Imam Al-Askari stops in his walk and looks at him and he says, "Why do you lie?" The man says, "I wanted to ask him for 100 dinars and I went to him and I imagined that I would gain his favor by telling him I have nothing, that I'm in a state of penury, help me." He says, as soon as I said this, "I have nothing," the Imam stopped me and said, "Why do you lie? I know that you have 200 dinars of gold buried in your house in such and such location, yet you're asking me for 100 and you're lying to say that you have nothing." The Imam says, "I will still give you." And immediately the servant of the Imam comes and presents him 100 dinar without him having to say more than this. But the Imam says, "I swear to you that you will not benefit from that wealth that you possess in your house, that you lied about to take advantage of." The significance of this statement of the Imam and how he structures his thought is, one, to say that his knowledge of the unseen does not prevent his generosity. And two, the discussion of why that wealth would not benefit this individual could be the fact of saying that the Imam wants to say that Allah will hold you accountable for the fact that you lied, and that lie will become true for you. So the Imam gives him the explanation, says that wealth won't benefit you. And sure enough, that man who had been saving this wealth, he says, one day I went to go get it. One of my own sons had stolen from where I had buried it and used it for himself as opposed to me being able to use it. So he says the word of the Imam came true. The second of these narrations of the generosity and ilmul ghaib of the Imam comes from two personalities, one known as Ali ibn Ibrahim and his son Muhammad ibn Ali ibn Ibrahim. These two were not Shia, they were Waqifi, meaning they believed until the seventh Imam and then they stopped believing in Silsilatul Imamat. When they stopped believing in Silsilatul Imamat, they came out and they did their own thing until eventually they found themselves in a state of financial difficulty. And Muhammad ibn Ali, who narrates this hadith, says, my father Ali ibn Ibrahim says, let's go to the son of Rida. Not because of his imamat, but because of his generosity of this house. So when they proceed, Muhammad ibn Ali narrates, he says, as we were going, I had thought in my mind, if we are going to a generous man, I will ask him for 300 dirhams. I will spend 100 dirhams on clothing, 100 dirhams for my day-to-day expenses, and 100 dirhams to buy a donkey. He says, my father later told me that as we were walking to Samarra to see this Imam, he said I would ask for 500 dirhams. And of those 500, 200 he would buy clothing with, 200 he would spend on resolving his debts, and 100 he would keep for his day-to-day expenses. He says, both of us, my father and I, had an image in our mind and a hope that we were going with to go see the Imam. When we went to go see Imam Al-Askari, and we were allowed to see him because we were not Shia, meaning that the government didn't stop us from interacting with him, that's when we went to him, we sat down with him and we told him we're going through financial difficulty, and the Imam says, why did you wait so long? Why didn't you come to me sooner? Oh Ali ibn Ibrahim, I would have assisted you if you came sooner to me. They continue their conversation, but they never have the opportunity to ask the Imam for the amount of money that they had in their mind. They complete the conversation. As they leave, overcome by the personality of the Imam, one of the servants of the Imam follows them and hands the father 500 dirham and the son 300 dirham. And he then explains and says to the father, the Imam has specified for you to spend 200 for clothing, 200 on your debts, and 100 for food. And he turns to the son and says, the Imam has specified for you to spend 100 on a donkey, 100 for food, and 100 for clothing. And then Muhammad ibn Ali says, the servant went further, and the Imam has insisted that you don't go to the mountain, but rather go to this other city. And the son explains, he says, in my mind I had planned that when I would come across some money, I would move to earn my income into a mountainous area by the lands of Qazwin. But when the Imam advised me to go to another city that used to exist in the lands of Iraq, I went there and I found that greater wealth awaited me and great financial success came to me by following the advice of the Imam. This explanation was that the Imam used ilmul ghaib in both of these situations to demonstrate the proof and authority of imamat and to offer the support of showing what an Imam's knowledge is, to prove the fact that the hidayah of the Imam was better than anything else other people were following. If the Imam uses ilmul ghaib to offer assistance to those who are not on Islam and bring them to hidayah, it doesn't mean that the knowledge of the unseen or the knowledge of the Imam is only for foreigners. Rather, the third story that we mention is how the Shia benefit from the knowledge and the giving of the Imam. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Abu Hashim al-Ja'fari was a Shia who was a follower of the Ahl al-Bayt and an outspoken individual who served Ahl al-Bayt and was also imprisoned by the Khulafa of the Banu Abbas of that time. He says, I became so sick and tired of being in prison, I knew not where to turn, so I wrote a letter to Imam Al-Askari saying, I'm tired of this. Ya Ibn Rasulullah, pray for me to either be released or to die. He says, when I wrote this letter very quickly, in a very short period of time, a reply came from Imam Al-Askari that said that today you will pray Salat al-Dhuhr in your own house. The man in the morning receives this letter, and sure enough, under no explanation, shortly thereafter the jailer comes and says, the Khalifa has set you free, and sets him free, and he goes back to his house. Abu Hashim, entering his house, realizing, remember, he's been in prison for a long period of time, so long that he's lost hope in getting free, that he needs help. He says, I came home and I realized I haven't worked. My family doesn't have resources. There's strict poverty in my house and I have no way of taking care of my family. And he thinks to himself, maybe I should have asked the Imam for some money. And then he gets embarrassed. He says, I just had the Imam pray for me to get me free from jail. How can I ask him for money now? He says, as I was simply thinking these thoughts, a servant knocked upon my door and handed me a package from Imam Al-Askari which contained 500 dinars of gold and a message that said, Oh Abu Hashim, we are the ones who fulfill your needs and offer you assistance even if you don't have the time to ask us. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Meaning that if the Imam is generous to the one who does not have faith when they ask, simply us connecting to the Imam and looking to him for goodness, the Imam is the one who does shifa'ah for us, even when we don't have the energy to ask him. But his wasila is that it is one that we should desire and ask for and look for. It's described that after this incident, again, that the Imam returns to prison, and shortly within that period of time, the intention is made to assassinate the Imam. And which is why his imamat is the shortest, because the significance was them knowing that the next one that will come as his children, they had always known that the son of Hasan will be the qa'im, the riser, the one who will change the world. And they wanted to prevent that. Which is why at the age of 28 he is martyred, but we know for a fact that our Imam was born to us in that time and was present there. That affair that took place was by the guidance of Allah. In the same way that they describe that the birth of Nabi Musa was hidden until the time of the birth came, because the Fir'aun of that time was trying to stop the birth of Musa. The same way the Fir'aun of the time of Imam Al-Askari was trying to prevent the birth of Imam Zaman, and Allah fulfilled his affair as he did before. But that this Imam was the one who was then poisoned, and poisoned in a state of difficulty and loneliness, to where they say that this Imam, when he is poisoned, he spends his final night in writing of the affairs and letters to people of the Muslimin around the world. Our Imam, our 11th Imam, in his time, the Shia had spread across all of the Muslim lands. And in his final night of pain, he takes the time to write letters to Medina and the lands all over to fulfill their needs until the time of Salat al-Fajr comes. And it said that the servant who was accompanying our Imam, he says the weakness of the Imam overcame him so much that I needed to bring the water for Imam Al-Askari to do wudu. When he had performed his wudu, Imam Al-Askari is that one who the poison had weakened him by Salat al-Fajr so much that he had to recite Salat al-Fajr in his bed. He could not physically rise to say his prayers. Shortly thereafter, he says, a young boy came to visit his father, paid his respects, as they describe and say that the breath of Imam Al-Askari became light. His eyes began to close. The sweat of death overcame his brow. His hands and feet began to close. And the father of my Imam was shaheed as his soul left his body. Imam Zaman, in a very, very young and tender age, the youngest of any of the A'immah, was present with his father and responsible for taking care and preparing the affairs and the ghusl and the kafan of his father alone in the early hours of morning on that day. But, O my Imam, with respect, your father had his son with him. Your father was martyred in a place that was in his house and was buried within his house. But, oh, your grandfather Hussein, who was killed alone and thirsty as a stranger in a foreign land, who was killed in a land that was not his home, that was not amongst his family. You were with your father, but it was Ali ibn al-Hussein who was in a tent and sick, and Abu Abdullah who lay alone with no one but enemies around him. Oh Hussein, what we saw in your Shahada that no Imam has seen before. Ala la'natullahi ala al-qawm al-zalimin. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلِبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ راجعون رضا بقضائه وتسليما لأمره. ماتم حسین.
کہتے تھے شاہ زمان بابا حسن عسکری، ہائے یہ کیا ہو بابا حسن عسکری سوئے جیا چل بسے کون ہمارا اے اب دل ہوا ٹکڑے میرا بابا حسن عسکری کون تھا ظالم ہے جس نے دیا زہر کر دیا بن باپ کا بابا حسن عسکری روتی ہے مادر کھری پیٹتی ہے ہر گھڑی ہو عسکری عزاداروں گل سامراں میں ہوتا تھا جس وقت بین کا گل سامراں میں ہوتا تھا جس وقت بین کا عریان سر ہے آج امام زمان کا ماتم ہے آج عسکری شاہ ذیشان کا عریان سر ہے آج امام زمان کا آدان ٹکڑے شیک جگر کر دیا سارا آدان ٹکڑے شیک جگر کر دیا سارا پامال ہوا باغ رسول انام کا ماتم ہے آج عسکری شاہ ذیشان کا عریان سر ہے آج امام زمان کا جب زہر دے کے صدمے سے تڑپنے لگے سرور جب زہر کے صدمے سے تڑپنے لگے سرور نظروں میں تھا وہ واقعہ تصویر حسن کا ماتم ہے آج عسکری شاہ ذیشان کا عریان سر ہے آج امام زمان کا زہرا پچھاری کاتی ہے پوتے کی لاش پر زہرا پچھاری کھاتی ہے پوتے کی لاش پر ہے حال غیر دیکھ کے اہل آسمان کا ماتم ہے آج عسکری شاہ ذیشان کا عریان سر ہے آج امام زمان کا رونے سے حشر ہو گیا سب جن و بشر میں رونے سے حشر ہو گیا سب جن و بشر میں تابوت اٹھا جب کہ شہ دو جہان کا ماتم ہے آج عسکری شاہ ذیشان کا عریان سر ہے آج امام زمان کا یا رب تیری جناب میں غمگی کی ہے دعا یا رب تیری جناب میں غم کی ہے یہ دعا دامن نہ چھوٹے ہاتھ سے شاہ زمان کا ماتم ہے آج عسکری شاہ ذیشان کا عریان سر ہے آج امام زمان کا آخر کا وقت کہنا میرا یہ سلام ہے سب عاشق حسین کو میرا سلام آئندہ سال پھر بھی ملیں گے یہاں غلام حامی اگر حسین علیہ السلام کا حل کیجئے مشکل میری اب دیر ستم ہے عباس علی تم کو سکینہ کی قسم ہے یا موسی کاظم ہمیں آفت سے چھڑاؤ یا موسی کاظم ہمیں آفت سے چھڑاؤ بہرے حسن حسین مصیبت سے بچاؤ الفاتحہ
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليك يا رسول الله يا محمد بن عبد الله السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين يا علي بن أبي طالب السلام عليك يا خديجة الكبرى أم المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدتي نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا حسن بن علي المجتبى. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله يا حسين بن علي الشهيد بكربلاء. السلام عليك يا علي بن الحسين زين العابدين. السلام عليك يا محمد بن علي الباقر. السلام عليك يا جعفر بن محمد الصادق. السلام عليك يا موسى بن جعفر الكاظم. السلام عليك يا علي بن موسى الرضا. السلام عليك يا محمد بن علي الجواد. السلام عليك يا علي بن محمد الهادي. السلام عليك يا حسن بن علي العسكري. السلام عليك يا حجة الله يا ابن الحسن يا صاحب الزمان. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن. السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن. السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.